Hello, Hilary. It's really great to see you today. As you know, I'm an early careers researcher in Gerontology, and I'm really delighted to meet you and learn all about the Ransackers Association. Could you tell me, what is the Ransackers Association all about?
We're about serious study for older people, primarily older people over 50 who missed out on higher education when they left school. There's currently a large number of particularly women who had to go straight to work or were married very early or were prevented by their family from actually studying any further when they were young people. And over a 10-year period, Ransackers Association worked with 4 or 5 colleges up and down England to run these really detailed 10-week courses where people could go residentially, go back to study, choose their own topic, and they were coached and tutored and mentored to study that particular topic, use the library, learn about computers, and write a miniature thesis. There were Northern College, Ruskin College, and Hillcroft College, the Women's College. They all took part, and so did some others. This was terrific. About 500 people did these courses, but, and here comes the big sea change, the government we now have in the UK removed funding from the kind of access back to education scenario, and all the courses now have to be preparing you to go to a job. And some ransackers want to go to a job because they're the younger old people, so they're between 55 and whatever age we all start working for paid money these days, which some people carry on till they're 80 anyway. And others would identify themselves as pensioners who want to use their brains and really study. In the way that a lot of research shows that study keeps your brain active, and we're very concerned about the opportunities that should be there for older people to study. So we started doing a bit of research to really take this further and get our voice heard in the gerontology academic community.
So that's absolutely fascinating. Can I just rewind for a moment? So these are women and men.
It's mixed, yes.
Over the age of, you said, 55.
That's right.
And they usually didn't have, would they have had the equivalent of the GCSEs and A-levels?
They might well have done, but what they would be missing would be after school, further and higher education.
And so they had the chance through the Ransackers Association.
They did.
To study, to get these skills. Mm-hmm. And maybe can you give me some examples of what they studied there?
Right, well we did some unfunded research during 2015, and we interviewed about 20 people who went to Ruskin College, Oxford. We also got in the library archive and we went through about 180 of the mini theses that they had filed in that library, and we found that over 30% of the study had been historical some way or other, either straightforward history of the Victorian workhouse, for instance, or autobiographical study of their own family, their own early life, or biographies of people that were historical or political or literary or art figures.
Really interesting.
That was the most popular topic of study. Behind that came social issues. Housing was in there, drug abuse was in there, anti-racism and that kind of thing was in there. And quite a few people looked at various aspects of ageing.
So interesting. So older students studying ageing.
That's
themselves.
Right. Yes, with their own experiences thrown in.
Very interesting. And you said now the big change has come and this is not possible anymore. The Ransackers can't really offer the same support as they used to.
Well, it's the colleges. The colleges actually ran those courses. Ransackers Association is the copyright trademark, the innovation to have this type of course. And the colleges made it very clear about 18 months ago that the funding was now completely different. And we looked long and hard about whether we could get an IT type course off the ground. And we found that for it to attract funding, it would have to be a set of skills that you need to work in an office. But these are not the set of skills that our older people need. Our older people need to be able to use smartphones, tablets, whatever television setup they've got in their house. They need to be able to use Google, they need to be able to use the internet. And it's not just a question of a Windows machine and what it does in an office. It's a question of adapting, because you may have started off with a laptop. As you know, they pack in. This is very, very annoying for the older generation, particularly those over 70 and 80, because they are not used to things packing in their house. Their cooker normally goes for longer than their laptop does, for instance. And they find it very difficult adapting from one machine to another as technology moves on. And if the icons change a little bit, they need help to understand that if you see a load of dots like this, oh, that opens up a whole menu, does it? Oh, I didn't know that. Because they don't tend to go exploring in case they delete something. It's just the non-digital generations have that kind of approach. So we tried to get a course off the ground. We haven't yet managed it, but if there's a college out there that would like to collaborate with us over a very interesting and innovative digital approach, we're there.
So basically enable all the students to then have these skills and capabilities with the technology they have at home to do serious study. To do use of technology for their life and to do serious study. Because these days you have a real problem if you can't actually access information about your local council, about your holiday, about your trains. You'll pay more for your gas and electric if you can't do it online. And we do take part in a number of older people's forums with Age UK about this sort of issue. It isn't the topic that we're doing research on at the moment, but it's one of our interests. So tell me, I believe at the moment you have another project going on.
We do, because we've used the first unfunded research project to put a quick presentation together about the early findings. And as well as some of these RT issues, which I've just mentioned, where people had learnt in a classroom but found that wasn't quite enough for when they got back home and had to cope with the new gadget, we found that the second thing that was coming out of it was confidence. Mm-hmm. So these are people that had been told or felt they were educational failures when they were young. And a number of people mentioned failing the 11 plus, and that had really put them on a different pathway. So when they did the Ransackers course, the word confidence came out loud and clear, and people said, oh, it opened doors for me. And quite a few of the ones we interviewed had gone on to volunteer in a stronger way, or get involved with the local council, or give talks. They'd gone out there and been very active in the community. So we put in the BSG Averil Osborn Fund to do some, well, it is funded research, but it's only slightly funded because there's quite a tiny fund, for another year. And we're currently on a March to March 12-month project which looks at the benefits of serious study for these older people and what can it do for them in their participation as older citizens.
Very interesting. So you basically built on the previous research which was unfunded.
That's right.
Now on this part. And what I clearly heard as a message is that all the work you do with the Ransackers is not just giving the skills, the technological skills for surviving nowadays in the world, but you also give confidence to those Ransacker students.
Well, that comes with it. And what we're doing on the research project at the moment, we're working with 6 completely amateur researchers. These people are not academics. These people are, most of them have gone through Ransacker courses and had that particular bit of study, but they've never done this type of research. So we have just 3 workshops, and in workshop 1, we coached and trained them how to work a digital recorder. And out they went with a set of questions and some coaching about how you do the follow-up question, and about how you watch the facial expression, and about how you might ask extra questions. And we've got 18 interviews in the bag. from this team of 6 people who are all over England, one in Penzance, one in Birmingham, a bunch of them in London. And we now have that data stored. I've been acting as the coordinator of the project and managing the project. We have 3 gerontology academics from OU and a chap who did a PhD at Keele to mentor and actually run the workshops and facilitate and keep a bit of academic rigour going. Because with the funding we've got, you can't be too rigorous. You very much glue and string is the way we've got to operate. And we've got probably 7.5 hours worth of data in there, which we'll be meeting in July to take this forward and check the quality of this data, see whether we need to interview any more people, do some more role play on interviewing, and work out how we're going to analyse this data, because we don't want the 3 academics descending on them with their academic hats like God from above. We want there to be a participation of the whole team, because the Ransackers have a very democratic ethos, so we have to match up the academic way of doing things with the let's get everybody involved in the decision. This is a very challenging and probably an innovative way of working, actually.
It sounds very collaborative and very positive for research by involving older researchers. And am I right in thinking their participants, the people they interviewed, were also older people?
They were all older when they studied, so some of them studied in their 50s and some people are now in their 80s and may have done the study fairly recently. So they actually interviewed a mixture of people. Some of them did the Ransacker courses, so they did 10 weeks residential, a topic of their own choosing. But other people had, for instance, studied Italian over a long period of time until they got fluent, gone to class after class until it really went in, or they had put themselves through a degree as a very mature student, and in a couple of cases people had done masters, and I think we've interviewed one person who took a PhD in later life. Certainly we know people who took PhDs, and last year we met Elsie, who was studying a PhD, and she was coming up to 89 and was just presenting it. It can be done.
Yeah, fascinating. And with the interview questions, it would be all about the experience of them studying, or would it be more about where does it take them to in the future, or is that something which is up to the researcher themselves and you don't know at the moment?
We had it in 3 sections. We had, tell me a bit about your education or your lack of it before you studied in your situation. So people would talk about working class backgrounds and that kind of thing. We then talked about, tell us about your study during the study. What did you find challenging? How were you supported? And then we talked about after the study. Did you go on to do something that you might not have done if you hadn't taken this study? So that particular set of questions could be posed in different ways, and probably we need to look a bit closer at how we've asked those after questions on some of the people.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing the result of this project. I believe you will be presenting next year at the BSG.
Well, we will be doing a mini presentation at the Ransackers AGM conference, which is September the 20th in London. So that's the first public presentation of this. And the second public presentation is during February. We have to run an event. Don't know where yet. Could be London, could be Oxford. Those are probably the 2 most likely places where we'll do it. And then we have to present at the BSG Swansea next year. Full presentation, write the abstract and do it in a proper way.
Fantastic. So talking of the future, 2017 coming, what are the plans for the Ransackers Association?
Right, we have got an interesting situation because we still have some members who remember the courses, and they are having difficulty getting their minds around the fact that we're now in a different society. Of course, since the other week, we're now in a very different society with the Brexit, so funding is going to be pretty tight for a lot of things. I think what we very much have to do is to make sure that we've got the best links we can have with universities, with the colleges, that we have historical links with other community education people, and also with people who are looking at older workers' education. I think there's going to be an overlap between the kind of study that pensioners want to do and the kind of study that older workers want to do. And you do get a lot of people in the label of semi-retired who are doing bit paid work and a bit of being a pensioner. Mm-hmm. And I think there'll be much more of that. So we're going to have to look at what kind of workshops and joint activities we can run, probably with other people. We do a lot already with the Kilburn Voices in the Conversations into Action down in London. That's groups of older people studying different topics like housing and law. And we're going to have to look at whether research is the way forward or whether some events are the way forward.
Right.
Because it's very difficult to go from where we are now with people wanting these long courses but no public funding for that, and the fact that none of us currently know a millionaire, but if one flew out of the sky we'd say, right, we need 50,000 because we want to run a pilot course at one of these residential colleges. We know the people are out there who would like to do it because 500 did it in the past, so there'd be more of them out there. But in the absence of this friendly millionaire, we're going to have to look at different ways of going forward and becoming more loud voiced and going to more meetings and getting over the fact that later life isn't just about needing care and about getting dementia and getting mobility problems. It's also about keeping the brain going.
Yeah.
And it's not just doing the Daily Mail Sudoku. Some people want to study in a very serious way, and we'd like the door to be more open for that.
And if I understand it correctly, the topics the Ransackers chose in the past to study was all based on their own passion and interest.
That was very much part of it. That's what people wanted to do. We got people who said, I'd always wanted to study Robbie Burns, for instance, and they'd heard the poems, they'd been to the events, but they never actually studied. And people could get into it in a deeper way and write their own viewpoint on it. And they were coached to think a bit more academically with, well, what was my question? My first question was, this poet's approach to society and experience of life, but halfway through the research they would find they had to reformat the question, which is a common thing that happens to academics, but they learned a lot about critical thinking while they were doing it.
Fantastic. So if I would meet some people who are over 55 and they would like to get involved in serious study, what would they need to do? How can they support you? How can they become a member?
Well, there are two things really. People becoming a member, we have the website www.ransackers.association.org.uk. People can join via that. We have a £10 a year and you get newsletters for that. It gives you some telephone numbers to contact if you want to have a chat with somebody. We have these couple of events that I've mentioned. If people are within reach of London, there'll be September the 20th, and people who've never met us before are welcome to come along and take part in that day, which will be in a central London venue. And similar for the event that we'll be doing next February. And I should also mention that for those older people that want to take a degree, that door's still very much open. Okay, you have to take a student loan if it's a situation where you're paying the fee and you don't live locally. But if you happen to be a low-income pensioner, and anybody with state pension only will fit in this category, and some people with other bits of pension, if your pension is less than £21,000 a year, at the moment you fit in the category where you don't pay the loan back.
That's a fantastic opportunity for
So fingers crossed, there is still that door open, but we like to see other doors open where you can take taster courses face to face. The OU does a lot where you can do taster things online, but we find that some people want the face-to-face. They want the interaction with the tutor, and they want the interaction with the other people, the peer group that are studying. They've actually told us that on the 2 research projects.
Yeah, I can see this. I benefit from this as well. So thank you very much, Hilary.